The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Ambassador Unicong had ever seen. It stretched upward for nearly a kilometer, with floating platforms holding representatives from over 300 alien species. Light from distant stars poured through crystal walls, painting everything in shades of gold and purple. Una had stood in this chamber many times over the past 12 years. She had learned to keep her face calm, her voice steady, and her back straight. Today would be no different. She walked to the central platform, her boots clicking against the polished floor. Behind her, Lieutenant Hannah Cho followed in silence. Hannah was more than a guard. She was a friend, a soldier who had protected Una through dozens of difficult meetings. Today, Hannah wore her dress uniform, but beneath the fabric, Una knew she carried 3 hidden weapons. Old habits never died among humans. The chamber fell quiet as Una reached the speaking circle. Above her, on the highest platform, sat High Counselor Vrox. He was a reptilian creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with scales the color of dried blood. His eyes were yellow and cold, like a snake watching a mouse. Vrox had ruled the council for 200 years. He had never hidden his hatred for humans. Una pressed her hand to her chest in the traditional greeting. High Counselor, honored delegates, I come before you with a humble request. Vrox did not return the greeting. He simply stared. Una continued. 3 months ago, a solar flare struck the human colony on Kepler 7. The radiation destroyed our crops, poisoned our water, and killed 4,000 of our people. We have worked hard to rebuild, but we need help. I am here to request emergency aid from the Council's disaster fund. She held up a small device. Holographic images appeared in the air, showing the destruction. Children in hospital beds. Farmers standing in dead fields. Families burying their loved ones. The evidence was clear and painful. We asked for medical supplies, water purification systems, and temporary shelters, Una said. The cost is small compared to what the Council spends each year. We will repay every credit within 10 years. This is not charity. This is a loan between allies. She lowered the device and waited. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Vrox leaned forward, and a cruel smile spread across his face. Allies, he said. The word dripped with mockery. You call yourselves our allies? Humans have been part of this council for 12 years. 12 years. My morning tea is older than your species' membership. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not from everyone, but from enough. Una felt the sound like needles in her skin, but she did not move. Vrox stood. You come here begging for scraps like hungry animals. Your colony failed because your people are weak and foolish. Why should the great species of this council waste resources on galactic infants who cannot even protect themselves from their own sun? More laughter. Louder this time, Una took a slow breath. High Counselor, with respect, the disaster fund exists for situations exactly like this. I am not asking for special treatment. I am asking for the same help any member species would receive. You are not the same, Vrox hissed. You are primitives. You were living in caves while my ancestors ruled empires. You do not deserve to stand in this chamber, let alone make demands of your betters. The laughter died. The chamber became very still. Even the delegates who disliked humans seemed uncomfortable with Vrox's words. Una kept her voice steady. I am making no demands. I am following proper council procedure. If my request is denied, I ask only that it be denied through official vote, as the law requires. Vrox's eyes narrowed. For a moment, he simply stared at her. Then he raised one clawed hand and made a gesture. Commander Threll, remove this human from my chamber. She has wasted enough of our time. From the shadows behind Vrox's platform, a figure emerged. Commander Threll was the same species as Vrox, but younger and larger. He wore military armor covered in medals from battles against rebellious species. His reputation was well known. He enjoyed hurting those weaker than himself. Threll descended to the central platform. He towered over Una, his shadow swallowing her completely. Walk away, little human, he said, while you still can. Una did not move. I have the right to be heard. Council law protects diplomatic representatives from thralls. Hand moved faster than she could react. The blow struck her across the face with the force of a ground vehicle. Una felt her jaw break. She felt her teeth shatter. She felt the floor rise up to meet her as she fell. Blood filled her mouth. The world spun in circles of pain. Behind her, Hanacho shouted and rushed forward. She managed to land one punch on Threll's chest before 3 more guards appeared. They beat her with metal rods until she stopped moving. Until she stopped screaming. Until she lay in a pool of her own blood. Her arm bent at an impossible angle. Rox watched all of this with a satisfied smile. Drag them out. Let this be a lesson to any species who forgets their place. Guards grabbed Una by her hair and pulled her toward the exit. Through her blurred vision, she saw the delegates watching. Some looked horrified. Most looked away. None of them spoke. None of them helped. But they did not know something important. They did not know about the small device still attached to Una's uniform. A diplomatic recorder, standard equipment for all human ambassadors. It had captured everything. Every word, every blow, every laugh, and 12 seconds before the guards destroyed it, the device completed its transmission to Earth. 6 hours later, on the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Taiho Park sat alone in his office. The walls were covered with maps of star systems and photographs of ships. A small plant sat on his desk, the only soft thing in the room. Taiho was 60 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. He watched the recording 3 times without speaking. He saw Una fall. He saw Hannah broken on the floor. He heard the laughter of creatures who thought themselves superior. When the recording ended, Taiho sat in perfect stillness for a long time. His face showed nothing. His hands did not shake. But something changed behind his eyes. Something old and cold and patient woke up. He pressed a button on his desk. "Sir," a voice answered. "Contact Dr. Mingiesio. Tell her to activate Protocol Prometheus." There was a pause. "Sir, that protocol is for." "Are you certain?" "They struck our diplomat. They beat our soldier." They laughed. Taiho's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Yes, I am certain." "Understood, sir." "Activating Protocol Prometheus." Taiho ended the call. He looked at the small plant on his desk for a moment, then turned to face the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. "You wanted to see what humans really are," he whispered. "Very well. We will show you." Somewhere in the depths of space, humanity began to move. 1 week passed after the assault in the council chamber. High Counselor Vrox expected many things. He expected angry messages from Earth. He expected protests, demands, perhaps even economic threats. He prepared responses to all of these. He practiced his speeches about human weakness and the importance of knowing one's place. But none of it came. Earth sent no messages. No protests arrived. No demands were made. The humans simply said nothing. At first, Vrox enjoyed the silence. He told himself it proved his point. Humans were cowards, too afraid to challenge their superiors. He joked with Commander Threll about how easily the female ambassador had fallen, how satisfying it was to hear her bones break. But as the days passed, something strange began to happen. On the 3rd day, human merchants across the galaxy closed their shops. They did not explain why. They did not argue or complain. They simply locked their doors, packed their things, and left. Trade stations that had depended on human goods suddenly found their shelves empty. On the 4th day, human workers stopped reporting to their jobs. Engineers who maintained critical systems on alien stations simply walked away. Doctors who worked in alien hospitals collected their belongings and departed. Teachers, scientists, translators, pilots, all of them left without a word. On the 5th day, human ships began moving toward Earth space. Hundreds of them at first, then thousands. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, private yachts, every human ship in the galaxy changed course and headed home. They traveled in silence, ignoring all attempts at communication by the sixth day. There was not a single human left in alien space. Delegate Norum watched all of this with growing fear. He was an amphibian creature from a water world called Thesan. His people were not warriors. They were thinkers, scholars, diplomats. They had joined the council because they believed in cooperation and peace. And unlike most delegates, Norum had actually studied humans. He requested a meeting with Vrox. The High Counselor kept him waiting for 3 hours. When Norum was finally allowed into the private chamber, he found Vrox eating a large meal, completely unconcerned. "Delegate Norum," Vrox said without looking up, "what brings you here? Do you wish to beg for the humans too?" Norum chose his words carefully. "High Counselor, I am concerned about the human exodus. Their behavior is ... unusual. Their behavior is cowardly. They run home to hide like frightened children. So that is what concerns me." Norum stepped closer. "When weak species are attacked, they protest. They beg. They try to negotiate. The humans are doing none of these things. They are simply leaving. Quietly, completely." Crocs finally looked up. "Your point?" "My point is that this is not what weak species do. This is what dangerous species do. This is preparation." Vrox laughed, spraying food across the table. "Preparation? The humans have a fleet of perhaps 200 combat ships. We have 20,000. What could they possibly prepare for?" "I do not know," Norum admitted. "But I have studied their history. Humans are not like us. They did not stop fighting each other before they reached the stars. They brought their wars with them. They have been perfecting violence for longer than my species has existed." "Ancient history," Vrox dismissed. "They have been peaceful members of the Council for 12 years. Peaceful? Yes. But perhaps they were simply waiting, learning, watching." Urk stood towering over the smaller delegate. "You waste my time with children's fears? The humans are nothing. They will send an angry message, eventually we will ignore it, and everything will return to normal. Now leave. I have important matters to attend to." Norum left, but he could not shake his fear. That night, he began his own investigation. On the 7th day, every communication device in the galaxy activated simultaneously. It happened without warning. Screens on ships, stations, and planets across all of known space flickered to life. A single image appeared, a human male in a military uniform, sitting in a simple chair against a dark background. His hair was gray, his face was lined with age, and his eyes held no warmth at all. Admiral Tai-Ho Park began to speak. "My name is Admiral Tai-Ho Park, Supreme Commander of Earth's United Fleet. 1 week ago, your High Counselor ordered the assault of our diplomatic ambassador. Our soldiers beat her until her bones broke. They laughed while they did it. Your delegates watched and did nothing." He paused. His expression did not change. "We came to your council in peace. We asked only for fairness and respect. You gave us neither. You called us primitives. You called us children. You treated us as lesser beings, unworthy of basic dignity." Another pause. The galaxy held its breath. "You were wrong." Tai-Ho leaned forward. "Slightly. The United Earth Government formally declares war on the Galactic Council and all species, who remain members after 72 hours. Any species that withdraws from the Council and publicly condemns the assault will be considered neutral. All others will be considered enemies." He let the words sink in. "This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. You struck our hand of friendship. Now you will meet the other hand. The hand we have been hiding from you since the day we joined your council." The transmission ended. For a moment, the galaxy was silent. Then chaos erupted. Vrox burst into the command center, screaming for his tactical officers. "What is this? How did they broadcast on every channel? That is impossible." "Sir," one officer stammered, "we are receiving reports from the border. Human ships have destroyed 3 of our defense stations." 3 stations? When? During the broadcast. "Sir, they attacked while we were watching." Vrox felt something cold crawl up his spine. How many human ships? The officer checked his screens twice before answering. 12, sir. 12 ships destroyed 3 stations with full defensive capabilities. That cannot be right. Check again. I have checked, sir. The reports are confirmed. And, sir, there is more. What? The officer's voice shook. Our border sensors are detecting movement in human space. A large movement. How large? The officer turned pale. We cannot count them all, sir. There are too many. Our sensors were not designed for numbers this high. Brox grabbed the officer by his uniform. Give me an estimate. Thousands, sir. Perhaps tens of thousands. All combat vessels. All heading toward our space. For the first time in 200 years, High Counselor Vrox felt afraid. But he was too proud to admit it. Too proud to back down. Too proud to apologize for what he had done. And that pride would cost the galaxy everything. Far away, on the bridge of the battleship U.S. Vengeance, Captain Ji-Wen Lee watched the stars streak past as his ship entered faster than light travel. Around him, 10,000 vessels flew in perfect formation. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. His communications officer turned to him. Captain, the declaration has been broadcast. The galaxy knows. Juan nodded slowly. He thought about Ambassador Yuna lying in a hospital bed with her jaw wired shut. He thought about Lieutenant Hannah, still in surgery, doctors fighting to save her arm. He thought about every insult, every dismissal, every cruel joke humanity had endured for 12 years. Good, he said quietly. Let them know. Let them understand. We are coming. The fleet moved through space like a wave of steel and fire, and the galaxy began to learn what it meant to make humanity angry. Delegate Norum had not slept in 3 days. He sat alone in the council archives, surrounded by thousands of files about humanity. Most of these files were marked as unimportant, low priority, no strategic value. The council had never considered humans worth studying carefully. Now Norum understood. What a terrible mistake that had been. He read about something called World War I. Humans had killed 17 million of their own kind in just 4 years. They used chemical weapons that melted lungs. They dug trenches that stretched for thousands of kilometers. They invented new machines specifically designed to kill more efficiently. Then came World War II. This time, it killed 80 million. They split the atom and dropped nuclear weapons on cities. They built factories not for goods, but for death. They put their own people in camps and murdered them by the millions. Norum's hands shook as he read. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what came after. After their great wars, humans did not stop developing weapons. They built bombs that could destroy entire planets. They created diseases in laboratories that could kill billions. They designed computer systems that could crash civilizations. They never stopped preparing for war even during their longest periods of peace. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved past warfare before reaching the stars. They looked back at their violent histories with shame. Violence was something primitive, something to be overcome, something that belonged in the past. Humans were different. Humans brought their violence with them. They studied it. They improved it. They made it into an art form. And now, Norum understood something terrible. When humans joined the Council 12 years ago, they had hidden most of their military strength. They showed the Council a small fleet of 200 ships. They spoke softly. They smiled. They seemed harmless. It was all a lie. Not a lie of words. Humans had never claimed to be weak. But a lie of omission. They let the galaxy assume they were harmless. They let the Council feel superior. They watched and waited and built their hidden forces in silence. Norum ran too. Vrox's chamber with his findings. The High Counselor was in a meeting with his military commanders. They were planning a counterattack against the human fleet. They still believed they could win easily. High Counselor, Norum gasped. You must see this. You must understand what we are facing. Vrox glared at him. I told you to leave me alone with your fears. These are not fears. These are facts. Noram held up his datapad. Humans did not show us their true fleet. They have been building in secret for 12 years. Conservative estimates suggest they have at least 10,000 combat vessels. Advanced estimates suggest they may have 30,000 or more. The room fell silent. That is impossible, Commander Threll said. We would have detected such construction. How? Norim demanded. We never watched them closely. We thought they were too primitive to matter. We let them move freely through our space for 12 years. They learned everything about us. We learned nothing about them. Brock shook his head. Even if they have more ships, they cannot match our technology. Our weapons are superior. Are they? Noram pulled up more files. Humans developed faster than light travel while still fighting each other. No other species has done this. They reached the stars not through peace and cooperation, but through competition and war. Every advance they made while preparing for conflict. He showed them images of human weapons, railguns that fired metal at a fraction of light speed, missiles that could track targets across solar systems, energy shields designed to absorb the exact frequencies other species used, stealth technology that could hide entire fleets from sensors. They studied us, Norim said quietly. Every time they visited our worlds, they were studying us. Every trade deal, every diplomatic meeting, every friendly conversation, they were gathering information. They know our weaknesses better than we know ourselves. Brock slammed his fist on the table. Enough. I will not be frightened by reports and estimates. We will crush them with overwhelming force. Commander Threll, take a fleet of 200 ships to their border. Destroy anything you find. Threll smiled. He was eager for revenge after the human declaration had made him look foolish. It will be my pleasure, High Counselor. Great. Threll's fleet arrived at the border. They found a single human ship waiting for them. The UES Vengeance hung motionless in space. It was large for a human vessel, but tiny compared to the Council warships surrounding it. 200 ships against one. The outcome seemed certain. Captain Giwan Lee sat in his command chair watching the enemy fleet approach. His crew worked in calm silence around him. No one seemed afraid. Captain, his tactical officer said, enemy fleet is powering weapons. I see them. They outnumber us 200 to 1. I know. The tactical officer hesitated. What are your orders, sir? Guan smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Show them what one human ship can do. The battle lasted 6 hours. Threll had expected to destroy the human vessel in minutes. Instead, he watched in horror as the Vengeance moved through his fleet like a predator through prey. Human weapons tore through Council shields as if they were made of paper. Human missiles struck with impossible accuracy. Human pilots performed maneuvers that should have been physically impossible. One by one, Council ships exploded. Their crews did not have time to escape. Their distress signals went unanswered. Their weapons could not track the human ship. Their shields could not stop human fire. Threll screamed orders that no one could follow. He called for reinforcements that would never arrive in time. He watched his entire fleet die around him. When it was over, only one Council ship remained. Threll's flagship, damaged but intact. The Vengeance had deliberately spared it. Captain Jawan Lee appeared on Threll's view screen. His face was calm, almost bored. Go home, Juwan said. Tell your council what happened here. Tell them this was one ship. One. We have 10,000 more. And tell Vrock something else. Threll could barely speak. What? Tell him that Ambassador Unikong is my cousin. Tell him that Lieutenant Hanacho trained me when I was young. Tell him that what happened in your council chamber was not just an insult to humanity, was personal. The screen went dark. Threll fled back to Nexus Prime. He arrived broken and terrified, the sole survivor of 200 ships. When he reported to Vrox, he could barely form words. One ship, he whispered. One ship killed everyone. It moved like nothing I have ever seen. Our weapons were useless. Our shields were useless. Everything we thought we knew was wrong. Vrox stared at him. For the first time, real fear showed in his yellow eyes. What have we done? He breathed. Across the galaxy, humanity's fleet continued its advance, and the galaxy finally began to understand that the humans had never been the children they pretended to be. They were wolves who had been wearing sheep's clothing, and now the sheep's clothing was gone. 3 months had passed since humanity declared war. In that time, the galaxy had learned a new kind of fear. Admiral Taiho Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Eternal, watching reports flow in from across the war zone. His fleet had won 47 major battles. They had captured 83 strategic stations. They had destroyed over 6,000 enemy ships. They had lost fewer than 200. But Taiho knew that victory was not just about destroying ships. It was about breaking the enemy's will to fight. It was about making them understand that resistance was pointless. It was about showing them that every path led to defeat. Dr. Mingy. SEO had designed Protocol Prometheus for exactly this purpose. The protocol was simple in concept, devastating in execution. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not seek honorable battles where both sides faced each other openly. They did not follow the unwritten rules that the galaxy had accepted for thousands of years. Humans fought to win. Nothing more. Nothing less. First, they targeted supply lines. Council fleets found their fuel depots destroyed, their food shipments captured, their ammunition factories in ruins. Ships that expected to fight found themselves stranded, their crews starving, their weapons empty. Second, they attacked communication networks. Council commanders lost contact with their forces. Orders went undelivered. Reinforcements went to wrong locations. The massive Council military became blind and confused, each unit fighting alone without knowledge of the larger war. Third, they struck at civilian infrastructure. Not to kill civilians, humanity had strict rules about that, but to create chaos. Power grids failed. Water systems stopped working. Transportation networks collapsed. Planets that had never seen war suddenly found themselves struggling to survive. And through it all, humans broadcast messages. The messages were the cruelest weapon of all. They came in perfect alien languages, spoken by voices that knew everything. They listed names of military officers and their families. They described the layouts of secret bases. They revealed scandals and corruption that governments had hidden for centuries. 12. Years of peaceful integration had given humanity access to everything. Human workers had been everywhere. Human merchants had traded with everyone. Human diplomats had visited every world. And all of them had been gathering information. The Council realized too late that they had invited spies into every corner of their civilization. By the end of the second month, 17 species had surrendered. They withdrew from the Council, publicly condemned Vrox's assault on Ambassador Yuna, and requested peace with humanity. Taiho accepted each surrender gracefully. The war was not about punishment. It was about change. But Vrox refused to accept reality. When Delegate Norum and others suggested surrender, Vrox had them arrested for treason. When 3 species tried to withdraw from the Council, he sent Commander Threll to punish them. When his own advisors told him the war was lost, he executed them in the Council chamber. His madness only made things worse. Species that might have stayed loyal saw what happened to those who questioned Vrox. They saw that the Council offered only death, while humanity offered peace to those who surrendered. One by one, more species defected. At the start of the 3rd month, Ambassador Unicong made her first public appearance since the assault. She stood before a camera in a simple room. Her jaw had healed, but a scar ran along the left side of her face. She had refused surgery to remove it. She wanted the galaxy to remember what had been done to her. "My name is Unicong," she said. 3 months ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and asked for help. I was struck, beaten, and dragged away like an animal. My guard, Lieutenant Hannah Cho, nearly died protecting me. She paused. Her eyes were calm but filled with cold fire. We came to you in peace. We offered friendship, cooperation, and respect. You showed us what you truly thought of us. You showed us that you saw us as lesser beings. You showed us that our dignity meant nothing to you. She stepped closer to the camera. Now we show you what we truly are. We are not the weak children you believed us to be. We are the descendants of warriors, survivors, and conquerors. We have been fighting since before your species existed. We did not forget how. We simply chose not to use those skills. Her voice hardened. You made us remember. The broadcast spread across the galaxy. Billions watched as the scarred ambassador spoke words that would be remembered for centuries. This war will end. The council will fall. And when it is over, we will build something new, something better. But first, Vrox and those who stood with him will face justice. Not revenge justice. There is a difference. Humanity knows this difference, even if you do not. The broadcast ended. 1 week later, Admiral Taiho Park led the main fleet to Nexus Prime. The journey took 3 days. 10,000 human ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged, their crews ready. They passed through systems that had already surrendered, where alien populations watched in silence as the human armada flowed past their worlds. No one tried to stop them. No one dared. When the fleet arrived at Nexus Prime, they found the station surrounded by the last of the Council's defenders. 3,000 ships, for everything Vrox had left. They formed a defensive sphere around the station, preparing for a final stand. Taiho studied the formation for a long moment. Then he gave his orders. The human fleet spread out, surrounding the Council forces completely. They did not attack immediately. They simply waited, letting the Council commanders see what they faced. 10,000 ships against 3,000. But more than that, 10,000 ships crewed by humans who had won every battle, who had proven themselves unstoppable, who had already destroyed fleets twice this size. Inside the Council chamber, Vrox watched through the crystal walls. Human ships filled the sky in every direction. They blocked out the stars themselves. There was no escape. No reinforcement. No hope. Delegate Norum, recently released from his cell by guards who had finally lost faith in Vrox, stood beside the window. It is over, Norum said quietly. You must see that now. Vrox said nothing. His claws gripped the arms of his throne so tightly they cracked the ancient stone. They're not attacking yet, Norum continued. They are giving you a chance to surrender. To save what lives can still be saved, you could end this now with some dignity intact. Vrox turned to look at Norum. His yellow eyes were wild with fear and rage. For a moment, it seemed he might order Norum's execution, but then he looked back at the window, at the endless sea of human ships, at the death that waited for him in the darkness between the stars, and for the first time in 200 years, High Counselor Vrox had no words. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the final act to begin. The final battle for Nexus Prime lasted only 2 hours. When Admiral Taiho Arc gave the order to attack, the human fleet moved with terrible precision. They did not swarm forward in a chaotic charge. They did not waste ammunition on random targets. Each ship knew exactly which enemy to engage, exactly where to strike, exactly how to maximize damage while minimizing losses. The Council defenders fought bravely, but bravery was not enough. Human weapons cut through their shields. Human pilots outmaneuvered their best commanders. Human tactics anticipated every move they made. One by one, Council ships fell silent. Some exploded. Others simply drifted, their crews dead or surrendering. A few tried to flee, but human vessels caught them easily. There was no escape from the net that had been drawn around Nexus Prime. When the last defender fell, Taiho ordered his forces to hold position. He did not want to damage the station itself. Too many innocent beings lived there. Workers, families, children who had no part in Vrox's crimes. Instead, he sent a single shuttle to the main docking bay. Ambassador Unikong stepped off that shuttle 1 hour later. She walked through the empty corridors of Nexus Prime with Lieutenant Hannah Cho at her side. Hannah's arm was still in a healing brace, but she had insisted on coming. She wanted to see this through to the end. Behind them walked 20 human soldiers in full combat armor. They were not needed. The station's security forces had already surrendered, but their presence sent a message. Humanity would not be caught unprepared again. The doors to the council chamber opened. Una walked in slowly, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. The floating platforms that once held hundreds of delegates were mostly empty now. Only a few figures remained: Delegate Norium, and a handful of others who had stayed to witness the end. And at the top of the chamber, still sitting on his throne, was High Counselor Vrox. He looked smaller than Una remembered. His scales were dull. His yellow eyes were empty. The proud ruler who had ordered her beaten was gone. In his place sat a broken creature who had finally learned the price of cruelty. Commander Threll stood beside him in chains. Human soldiers had captured him trying to flee through a maintenance tunnel. He kept his head down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Una climbed to the high platform. She stood before Vrox and looked at him in silence for a long moment. Then she spoke. "Do you remember what you called us?" "Galactic infants. Primitives. Creatures unworthy of basic respect." Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Do you still believe that?" Vrox said nothing. Una turned to Threll. The commander who had broken her jaw, who had beaten Hannah nearly to death, who had laughed while doing it. "You thought violence made you strong," she said. "You thought hurting those weaker than yourself proved your power. You were wrong. Violence is easy. Cruelty is easy. Any fool with a fist can hurt another being." She leaned closer. "Restraint is hard. Mercy is hard. Building something instead of destroying it, that is what proves true strength. You taught us nothing we did not already know. But we have taught you something today. We have taught you that the weak can become strong, that the patient can become swift, that those who seem harmless can become the most dangerous force in the galaxy." She straightened. "And we have taught you that actions have consequences." Admiral Taiho Park arrived in the chamber a few minutes later. He looked at Vrox with an expression that held no hatred, no satisfaction, no emotion at all. "Just cold assessment, High Counselor," he said. "You are hereby removed from power. You will be transported to the moon of Thesan IV, where you will live out the rest of your days. You will not be executed. We do not create martyrs. You will simply be forgotten." Vrox finally spoke. His voice was a broken whisper. "Please, I can offer you anything. Power, wealth, territory. Just let me know." Taiho cut him off. "You had everything, and you used it to harm others. You do not deserve a second chance. You deserve to watch everything you built crumble while you sit alone and powerless. That is your punishment." Guards led Vrox away. He did not resist. He did not speak again. The creature who had terrorized the galaxy for 200 years simply walked out of history, never to be seen again. Threll received the same sentence. He wept as they took him, begging for death instead of exile. His pleas went unanswered. When the chamber was empty, except for humans and the remaining delegates, Una addressed the galaxy through a live broadcast. "The Galactic Council is dissolved," she announced. "Its laws protected the powerful and ignored the weak. Its structure allowed tyrants to rule without challenge. It failed every species it claimed to serve."
Oh.
She paused, looking directly into the camera. "In its place, we will build something new. The United Galactic Federation will be founded on different principles. Equality between species, regardless of how long they have traveled the stars. Protection for the vulnerable. Justice that applies to everyone, not just those without power." She gestured to Norium, who stepped forward nervously. "Delegate Norum of Thesan will serve as the first non-human ambassador to the new Federation. He was one of the few who questioned what was happening. He tried to warn others. He showed courage when courage was dangerous. That is the kind of being we want helping us build the future." Norum bowed deeply. Overwhelmed by the honor, the broadcast continued for another hour as Una outlined the framework for the new Federation. It would take years to build, but the foundation was laid that day in the ruins of the old order. 5 years later, a new alien species made first contact with the Federation. They were insect-like creatures from a distant star system. just beginning to explore beyond their homeworld. Their first ship arrived at a Federation border station, where they were greeted by a human diplomat and a Thesan guide. The aliens were curious about everything. They asked about the different species they saw. They asked about the history of the Federation. And eventually they asked about humans. What are they like? The alien captain inquired. We have heard stories, but we do not know what to believe. Delegate Norium smiled. After 5 years of working alongside humans, he had learned to understand them better than perhaps any non-human in the galaxy. They are complicated, he said. They are capable of great kindness. They build hospitals and schools on worlds that have never known such things. They share their technology freely. They protect species that cannot protect themselves. He paused. But they are also capable of great violence. When they are threatened, when their loved ones are harmed, when their dignity is attacked, they become something else. Something ancient and terrible. Something that the galaxy learned to fear. The alien captain looked uncertain. Should we be afraid of them? Norum shook his head. Not if you treat them with respect. Not if you keep your word. Not if you remember that they are people just like you and me, who want peace and friendship more than anything else. He looked out the window at a passing human ship. They offered this galaxy their friendship once. We rejected it. We hurt them. We laughed at their pain. And then we learned what happens when you make an enemy of humanity. He turned back to the alien captain. They are offering friendship again. To you. To all new species they meet. My advice is simple. Take it. Take their hand when they offer it. Because you never want to meet the other hand. The alien captain nodded slowly. Understanding, and somewhere in the vastness of space, humanity continued its journey among the stars, ready to offer peace, but always prepared for war. Some lessons once learned are never forgotten.